This is Newsroom on SABC News. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. My name is Jem Jansen. The show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube as we speak, really, with our entire show then available on our YouTube channel all of the time. Today, we look ahead to the inauguration of Jacob Zuma as the President of South Africa tomorrow. We talk cost and the job at hand for the President. We look at social media trends ahead of the inauguration. And then it's Africa Day this weekend as well. What are you going to do to celebrate that? First though, here are the top stories. Fresh after the country's fifth democratic elections on May 7, South Africa is ready to inaugurate Jacob Zuma for the second term as the President of the Republic of South Africa. The ceremony will take place at the Union Buildings in the Nelson Mandela Amphitheatre tomorrow. Guests are expected to arrive from 5 a.m. onwards. The swearing-in ceremony will take place at 11 a.m. More than 40 heads of state will attend. Thousands of people are expected at the inauguration, with approximately 4,500 being accommodated within the Nelson Mandela Amphitheatre. Once the formal proceedings are completed, a cultural event will take place on the southern lawns of the Union Buildings. The police have seized a huge cache of guns, ammunition and explosives at a house in Norwood, Johannesburg. 3 people were arrested, but the main suspect was not home at the time of the raid. The police found R1, R4 and R5 rifles, as long as AK-47 rifles and about 300 handguns. Explosives used for ATM bombings were also found. National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha has congratulated the team of officers involved in the operation. Elections for the European Parliament have started, with the Netherlands and Britain voting on the first day. An exit poll in the Netherlands has shown that the party of prominent Eurosceptic Geert Wilders has lost support compared to 5 years ago. The shock slide for his party bucked the expected trend of anti-EU parties winning support across the European continent. Government declined to give the cost of President Jacob Zuma's inauguration tomorrow, but said it would be cheaper than his first swearing-in 5 years ago. Minister in the presidency, Colin Chabane, told reporters in Pretoria less would be spent than in 2009 because of austerity measures being implemented by Cabinet. The 2009 inauguration cost taxpayers 75 million rand. The International Relations and Cooperation Department budgets provided for hosting 40 dignitaries, double the number that flew to Pretoria 5 years ago. To talk about the inauguration, what happened at the elections and the way forward, we're joined by political analyst Ralph Mateja. Good morning, Ralph. Thanks for joining us again.
Good morning, and thanks for inviting me.
Let's start with tomorrow. What are your expectations for the inauguration tomorrow?
Well, I'm expecting to see a head of state from within the continent, Africa, coming to Pretoria, coming to the Union Building. And I think it's a proud moment for Africa because South Africa has had yet another successful free and fair elections. And if you look at South Africa, the way in which the country is being seen on the continent, it is leading by example, free and fair elections. We know other countries on the continent are struggling with that, but to see South Africa doing it successively, I think it's something positive that most head of state will be coming to identify with the success story of South Africa.
Now, the election passed was free and fair, was well supported, above 70% of the population voted. What has it done for Jacob Zuma, though?
Well, most people were thinking, and some of the observers, the pundits, were thinking that these elections, the ANC was going to have a dramatic drop in the majority because of the perception that President Jacob Zuma's leadership has actually been quite troublesome to some extent. They've had patches that are quite uncomfortable thereof, but it didn't happen that way. Actually, in my view, these elections, the trend are similar to the previous elections, the party dropping by about 3%. The same trend could be seen in local government election, 2009 election. Nothing dramatic, really. People voted, and that shows that South Africans are willing to give the ANC under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma yet another mandate, although weakened slightly because of the 3% drop. Nothing dramatic, yet you do have that drop. So I think that it's given President Jacob Zuma an opportunity to go and consolidate his legacy. I'm of the view that the first term of the president is about setting the framework, putting the institutions together. together, maybe rearranging the bureaucracy. The second term should be about consolidation, cementing what has been in place, and we will see if that is going to be the case.
We'll get to the legacy now. I still want to finish up with the election and the success story that was the election. Good story to tell, the narrative that came out before. It proved to be a huge hit with South Africans and a big success, and very well delivered by Jacob Zuma. And that in the end made a big difference when we think at the polls.
It was a simple message that, we do have a good story to tell. There are challenges, but we do have a good story to tell. And in the totality of the story as well, when we say there is a good story, when people are saying they have got a good story to tell, it doesn't mean it has to be a perfect story. What that means is that you just have to acknowledge successes and also acknowledge the shortfalls and understand that everyone else is in on this project of building South Africa further. And I think the NC, went with that simple message. It has worked. Well, not without any challenge, of course. As part of democracy, you had opposition parties challenging that narrative of good story. That gave it even more credence.
Let's talk about the inauguration tomorrow, and who do you expect to come, and how that affects, in a way, legitimacy to leadership on the continent.
Well, let me start with who I don't expect to see here. Some of African head of state here. I don't expect to see Paul Kagame. We know the diplomatic row between South Africa and Rwanda. And also, I don't expect to see Goodluck Jonathan because of the crisis in Nigeria that has preoccupied him. But I'm expecting to see head of state. I'm expecting to see Robert Mugabe coming in. I'm expecting to see the president of Tanzania as well, who seems to have warmed up very well to South Africa. I'm expecting to see the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo as well coming in. I'm expecting to see quite a number of head of states coming and descending into South Africa. It is going to be something that they are proud of. They will be rallying around South Africa. And also they need that as well, to demonstrate back that they like what they are experiencing.
Absolutely. If it's going to be the African century, we need stability in South Africa to be built out into the rest of the continent. That brings us to President Jacob Zuma's legacy. What does he want to achieve in the next term?
President Jacob Zuma might come up as one of the most misunderstood leaders. If you look at the numbers, you look at his performance in terms of the numbers, you look at the early childhood education, access, you look at the fight against HIV, the numbers are good. There has been progress. But the problem that he's dealing with is the question of credibility of his leadership, the people, the cabinet. And I think that it should be very at the center of his legacy to bring about cabinet that restores the credibility of his leadership so that those things that he has succeeded on can actually be seen. And I think it's going to be a lot around credibility. It's about how his cabinet is being viewed, because a lot of perceptions around how he has performed. Some of those perceptions have got nothing to do with the reality. The numbers speak something different. So you need to align doing good things with being seen doing good things. And to be able to be seen doing good things, you need that credibility. And I think he needs to focus much on making sure he has got cabinet that cannot just be looked at and be dismissed. You need credible individuals.
In 2019, if the term is finished and President Jacob Zuma looks back at both his terms, what do you think he would be comfortable with for people, in a word almost, to look back at his legacy?
Well, he needs to be working on rural economic development, bringing back people from the outskirts into the center of the economy. Infrastructure in South Africa, very critical to his leadership, infrastructure development. Those are some of the things he needs to be looking at. He is very passionate about education. He has spoken about it. And I think access to education is one of the issues that he will be looking back at. If you look closely, you look at the numbers, you look at the substance, there is indeed certain positive aspect to his leadership.
Absolutely, there is. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, political analyst Ralph Mateka, giving us his insights ahead of the inauguration. Of course, it will be the fifth one, and it will happen at the Union Buildings, the Nelson Mandela Amphitheatre tomorrow. Now, to take us through the history of inauguration in South Africa, here is our producer, Anine Dormel, with a little slideshow, really.
Thank you, Eben. As the nation gets ready for President Zuma to take the oath of office tomorrow, let's take a look at some of our country's previous inaugurations.
Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster, that lasted too long must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all. All this we owe both to ourselves and to the peoples of the world who are so well represented here today.
Definitely one of our nation's most memorable moments, the day we saw the inauguration of South Africa's first democratic president, Nelson Mandela. Let's now take a look at a timeline since that first democratic inauguration. During his term, Mandela balanced business and investor-friendly economic policies with development and social welfare programs that provided relief to the poor. Then in 1999, we saw Thabo Mbeki take the oath. Now, while Mbeki was praised for his black economic empowerment policies that helped accelerate the growth of the black middle class, we know that he did, however, not complete his term in office, and that's when Kgalema Motlanthe was elected to the post of president by Parliament in 2008. After that, the first inauguration of President Jacob Zuma took place on the 5th of August in 2009. In his first term, Zuma pushed for significant infrastructure investments but has struggled to deal with a number of public and private sector strikes. Looking at the next 5 years, President Zuma will have to continue to address poverty, unemployment and labour tensions within the country. That's all from me. Back to you, Evan.
Thanks very much, Anine. Here, a little timeline as to how we've gone over the last 20 years, really. South Africa now needs bold, decisive, courageous and responsible action to transform its economy, said former South African Reserve Bank Governor Tito Mboweni this week after he surprised a number of people when he declined a nomination for a seat in Parliament. South Africa's economy, Africa's second largest now, has, according to reports, been suffering from dwindling investor confidence, credit rating downgrades, a weakening currency, and a series of strikes. Now, could a new parliament that was sworn in this week and an impressive inauguration perhaps turn these views around? We are joined by efficient group economist Dawie Rood to delve a bit deeper into this conversation. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good morning.
That was a bit of a mouthful there. What do you make of Tito Mboweni's comments a little bit earlier in the week about what we need? Do you share these views? This is what our economy needs after the election and inauguration?
We need something else, that's for sure. Maybe just a bit of a background. If you look at the South African economy and look at all sort of macroeconomic indicators, if you look at all sort of indices where we compare South Africa with many other countries in the world, indices like, for example, the ease of doing business or perceptions about investments and the like. Yeah. South Africa has been slipping. The reality is the South African economy has been doing well. Of course, we know 2007, 2008 was a financial crisis. Everybody was affected by that. But a lot of our problems are simply homemade. Yeah. And yesterday, the Reserve Bank also indicated in their Monetary Policy Committee statement that they expect economic growth for 2014 to be 2.1%. They reduced economic growth quite substantially downwards. Yeah. So clearly the South African economy is in trouble here. And also for other numbers, for instance, there's a good possibility that we could get a downgrade from the rating agencies globally. Yeah. So we need to change something. And I think perhaps we have to turn the question around. Should government be doing more? And I think the answer is government should be doing less, actually. And they should be doing the things that they are doing much better, but get out of the way of the private sector. And there are plenty of things that we need to do.
What about the responsibility on capital? What about the responsibility on capital? The fact that it's so difficult to do business in South Africa because of all these monopolies that we have and the kind of restrictions that they put on doing business and especially doing smaller business.
Talking about monopolies, the biggest monopolies in South Africa are state-supported monopolies. Look at Eskom. That's one of the biggest monopolies in South Africa, and it's doing immense damage to the South African economy. I think the answer is, and we're not making it easy for investors and for business people to come to South Africa and to stay in South Africa. The answer simply is that we have to create an environment that makes it easy and attractive for people to come and do business in South Africa. Now look, for example, at labour legislation, labour relations in South Africa, the strikes in South Africa. It is doing immense damage to the South African economy, not only in terms of the lost production, but foreigners, they watch TV, they read newspapers, and they see what's going on in South Africa. And I'm a foreigner, I'm a German, I want to invest somewhere. Am I going to put my money in South Africa, or am I going to put my money in Brazil, for instance? The reality is South Africa is competing with a lot of countries out there, and capital is scarce, and we have to create a very attractive environment. And I'm afraid we're not doing that. Maybe, and we're talking about the president. Tomorrow the president will be inaugurated again. Sunday we will hear about the new cabinet. And maybe we have to realize that the job of the president is not to run the economy. The job of the president is to run the civil service. The civil service is there to support the private sector, to support the economy. They don't take the lead, they provide the platform where the guys that really create jobs and really create wealth can do what they are best at doing, and that's the private sector. So do the things that you're supposed to be doing well. Look, for example, at education. It is a disaster. Look at electricity provision. We know about that. Look at the health services. Look at just about every state department, every state-owned enterprise in South Africa. It is badly run. So if we talk about the new cabinet, please, Mr. President, put people in charge that can run those institutions well, and you will be absolutely amazed about what the private sector can do.
I want to talk about sort of global view of South Africa. What do you think this election has done? South Africa is a stable democracy. What has it done for our economy? And what is something like an inauguration tomorrow? What does that do for the image of a country and the outlook?
Well, and the good news is it was really a boring election. And the good news, the whole political process in South Africa today is a boring process, and that's really very good news, because South Africa has become a normal democracy. Normal democracies go and they elect somebody and they inaugurate a new president and they appoint a new cabinet, and nobody really pay much attention to that. The international environment and the business environment will only talk about this, and they'll only get worried or start changing or maybe invest more or less if there's a significant change in policy. We know what policies are. We know we've got a macroeconomic plan in South Africa. We know it's badly implemented. We've got all these plans. We simply don't implement that. And we know we're probably going to have more of the same again. For that reason, why react? It's going to be the same old story all over again. Unless, of course, there's going to be some nice surprise in the appointment of the new cabinet.
Well, we hope so. That happens on Sunday, and let's hope that you bring the good news and it's right. Davy Ruet, Efficient Group economist, giving his take ahead of the inauguration weekend. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, final arrangements for the inauguration of Jacob Zuma at the Union Buildings tomorrow will be announced to the media later today. Meanwhile, Chief Justice Mogoeng has sworn in the 54 permanent members of the National Council of Provinces. Former Northwest Premier Thandi Modise is the new chair, serving for a second time.
Modise was elected unopposed.
Our hands can only be on the heartbeat of our communities through ensuring that our conception of integrated development embraces the reality and totality of the challenges faced in our different provinces and local municipalities.
Papitau was elected deputy chair and Dr. Hunadi Madime, chief whip.
I take this to be your instruction, members, and that of your respective provinces, for me to be part of the collective that will steer the ship and ensure that the National Council of Provinces live to the constitutional mandate.
The NCOP has 90 members representing 9 provinces, 54 are permanent, while 36 are seconded by provinces periodically. All provinces, some led by their premiers, have pledged to work together with the NCOP in the fight against poverty, inequality and unemployment. Bulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, let's take a look now at front pages of the world. The International New York Times looking into cyber hacking in China and the shadowy lives that these hackers live. Yesterday, of course, in South Africa, we had the massive story of an international cyber syndicate bust with 12 people appearing in the Pretoria Magistrates Court. Moving on, The Independent in the UK reports on how new hopes for a malaria vaccine based on the proteins found in the blood of children who have developed a natural resistance to the virus. Then a beautiful picture on The Guardian this morning as lightning strikes a tall skyscraper. To have another look at these front pages, you can go to our Facebook page where we have all the news from all around the world. And let's now take a look at, what you are talking about on social media at SABC Newsroom. That's where we want you to send your contributions at SABC Newsroom. Even our Facebook page is SABC Newsroom. AMB says, congratulating South Africans ahead of Jacob Zuma's inauguration. Thank you. We accept. ANC History says, good morning, leaders. Tomorrow is the inauguration of President Zuma as he enters his second term in office. ANC lives, ANC leads. Skumba says, people of South Africa are starving and struggle to find jobs. On the other side, governments continue to pledge money on inauguration of second term of JG. Sorry, I don't understand. We have to inaugurate our president. We're a democracy. That's how it works. Kwena says, I missed what Kwena says, unfortunately, but let's now take a look at how the world's media reported on that day in history when Nelson Mandela took his oath in 1994. Landmark day it was.
When the man and the myth became simply Mr. President.
Will you please raise your right hand and say, so help me God?
So help me God.
The inauguration of Nelson Mandela was hailed as everything from a miracle unfolding to an historic moment for the whole world. With his eldest daughter at his side, Mandela called it emancipation.
The time for the hailing of the wolves has come.
.99% Zulu has returned to the Lyric Theatre in Gold Reef City in Johannesburg this weekend.
This guy doesn't know how to throw the mateba jive.
Sarah Dupree is bringing his celebrity impersonations to Johannesburg. Audiences will be treated to nights of glitz and glamour and Cher, Lady Gaga, Tina Turner and more impersonations.
That's Afro Showbiz News, Saturdays, 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
I, Jacob Zuma, swear that I will be faithful to the Republic of South Africa, so help me God.
Watch the inauguration of President Jacob Zuma on Saturday, 24th of May from 9 a.m. right here on SABC News Channel. All news, all global, all the time.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, another interesting factor to note is that this will be the first inauguration, where social media platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook are bigger than ever. Now, everybody can attend the inauguration from the palm of their hand. Here to help us look more into what you and the world, for that matter, have been talking about on social media concerning the inauguration and the new parliament is Tonya Kuri, the Managing Director of Data Driven Insights Africa. Good morning, and thank you. Always nice to have you back with us to give us the trends and the data. Tell us what people are talking about around this week, really?
Well, it's been quite interesting, Evan, because with Oscar Pistorius leaving court, everybody's looked for something else to focus on, and politics has definitely been the key point. And not only have we watched Parliament and the inauguration, but also the build-up to that has been quite extensive across both news media and social networks. And we measured over a period of 7 days, so the past week, what was being mentioned for each political party, then also for each political head, and then also how that then fared in social media. And what's interesting is, obviously in news media, ANC comes in at the top of the four.
Yeah.
But in social media, the DA has dominated the conversation.
Is that so? Those are the numbers?
Those are the numbers. So if you have a look at the top left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the ANC covers the majority of the news media as reported in South Africa. And then on the right, you're looking at DA covering a good 54% of the media, and that is of the social media. That's primarily because of the spat, the political spat between Lindiwe Mazibuko and Helen Zille.
Helen Zille, yes.
Yeah, that's caused an awful lot of conversation.
And a lot of controversy amongst that constituency, one would think.
Yes.
People must be quite opinionated about that and must be backing either one or the other leader.
Yes, very, very strong words. And what I found quite interesting is that Agang appeared very, very infrequently in the media. And I find that strange because there's been a lot about Mampela Ramphele's resigning and then not resigning, in politics and then not in politics. But that hasn't even sparked a small conversation, really.
The other one is the red little block there. It made quite a splash in Parliament as well this week. Everyone must have got a lot of traction on social media. Saw a lot of pictures on social media. People really having a go at it. But it's real marketing 101 that they did. It's been a real good job.
Well, the one thing you absolutely have to take your hat off is to the branding. The branding has been exceptional, and they literally painted the media red. So with all the things that we had to discuss surrounding Parliament, the run-up and the post-election dramatics and the political feuds in the media, EFF's colour red has dominated almost all the media reporting. This is news I'm talking about, not what you and I are saying to each other. It's actually what's been fed to us by the journalists. And we found that 23% of the coverage belongs to the colour red, and 16.06 to the term overalls, because, you know, they attended the parliamentary swearing in overalls and domestic worker uniforms, right? And then had to have a costume change in between or whatever. So this dominated quite a bit of the conversation. And then, of course, Nkandla still really
rages
big
on.
Story, yeah.
People not talking about the inauguration that much itself tomorrow?
Not in the past 24 hours and 7 days. I checked the 24-hour stats are about 16%, but over 7 days, 2.7%. But you will see, I think, overnight that will spike up, because as the news is reported and fed out there, and then people then have a conversation or comment on that media, that's how those statistics change.
And now with new members this week, new members of Parliament being sworn in and so forth, the South African media reporting extensively on that. What are some of the interesting angles or interesting stories that have popped out in the things that people are talking about?
Well, again, Lindiwe Mazibuko and Helen Zille dominating a lot of the conversation. And then also we found that President Jacob Zuma being targeted by the DA regarding the Zuma, they call it Zumaville, aren't they? The Nkandla issue. So that issue is a very big talking point, and we've also found that President Zuma's committee of Nkandla coming in under enormous conversation, and also reported in the news media. Thuli Madonsela also featuring prominently on the chart. Her report and her subsequent reports coming into the limelight, into the news media.
I want to continue about the Mazibuko Zille spat, as it were. How did people receive that, and who won that social media war, if it was such a thing?
Mazibuko won.
Did she win it?
And I think it's because she shut up. She didn't say anything. There was no massive retort from her. She just kept silent and retained her integrity, and then there was all this back and forth going on from the DA.
I do pick up that Helen Zille, she's very active in social media. She, as you say, she talks a lot and she takes stands and she argues with journalists and fights with people and does all sorts of stuff.
Very interactive.
Does that do a lot more harm than good?
It depends on what the message is, how the people respond to it. Like the Mazibuko issue really did stand in Mazibuko's favour because I think of the way she handled it. But then there are other issues where Helen Zille has interacted with the social media in such a way that it's caused a massive positive reaction for the party. So she really does use the interactive and social network platforms very well.
It's a tightrope that you constantly walk with people wanting to attack you.
Yes.
Thank you, Tonya, for joining us. That's Tonya, Managing Director of Data Driven Insights. Tonya Khoury giving us the inside track as to what you are talking about on social media. Of course, former President Thabo Mbeki has challenged African intellectuals to assist in the development of the future leaders on the continent. Mbeki was speaking at Irene in Pretoria last night.
Intellectuals from all over the continent gathered to share their views on the challenges facing Africa as it celebrates 50 years since the establishment of the OAU, which was the forerunner of the African Union. Mbeki slammed the levels of corruption in some member states.
I learned a terrible story. The son of a former president, has been arrested. What made me unhappy was the reason. And the reason, the charge, as I was told, the charge is of embezzling public funds to the tune of €500 million. And I was asking, how does that happen?
He also pointed out the weakest link.
Clearly, there is something that's gone wrong with regard to the quality of leadership on our continent.
But the former president believes all is not lost, as he does not expect the younger generation to stand idle while things go wrong.
Personally, I have no worry about the psychology, the readiness, the ability of our young people to rise up to the challenges that we face.
Today, former OAU Secretary General Salim Ahmed Salim will deliver the Mbeki lecture at UNISA.
Now, Africa Day will be celebrated on Sunday to commemorate the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, presently recognized as the African Union. The African Union has, over the years, brought together the continent to collectively address the challenges it faces, such as armed conflict, climate change and poverty. At a celebration held in New York last year that marked the 50th anniversary of the Union, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had this to say.
Africa is a continent on the move. Peace prevails in most African countries. Extreme poverty is declining, income is rising, and there have been important inroads against deadly diseases. Several African countries are among the world's fastest growing economies, defying the global downturn. Opportunities beckons for ever greater numbers of people. And
now, today, we are joined by the Deputy President of the African Union Student Alliance, Helene Liebenberg. The student-run organisation based at the University of Pretoria is dedicated to building awareness and greater understanding of the values and works of the African Union, while contributing to the development of an African awareness within the student community. Good morning, Helene. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
Firstly, let's talk about Africa Day and what you guys are doing over the weekend and how it's being celebrated and how it all sort of connects.
We had our Africa Day celebrations on Tuesday, and our topic was African identity. So we had a case study of African identity in Africa, and we had a lot of people there, like students, more than 100 students at this event at the University of Pretoria.
Are we as South Africans, are we as aware about our African identity as we should be?
I don't think so. I think we underestimate how important our identities are and the difference between the different countries and cultures in in Africa, and the importance of that plays.
Why do you think it's important for young people in South Africa, particularly, to be part of Africa Day celebrations?
Because we're the future. We're going to take this continent further, and it's up to us to make this a great continent.
and what do you think are some of the things that the youth of Africa want to see happen on the continent, and what are the challenges that you think young people want us to come to terms with on the continent?
We don't have, and I think a lot of us don't think that we have great leaders at the moment, that we need better leaders to be an example for us to follow through, like Nelson Mandela. And we need better job opportunities. We need a future to a bright future to look forward to at the moment.
Don't go away, stay with me, because we have another guest with us, a little treat for all of you at home. We are joined by a student from the University of Pretoria, Terry Adams, who has prepared, specially for the show, a poem for Africa Day. Good morning, Terry, and please go.
Good morning, Evan. The poem that I wrote is entitled Identity Crisis, and it speaks about African identity. If we have interbred like the jungle bunnies that they have called us, then I ask you one question. Who are we really? A people thrown into boxes of stolen cars and unexplained violence, angry because we have been told who we are. Why should we be told? Why don't we hold the power? They strip us naked, beat us up every day, but these crimes are not unjust. The most inhumane act done by the nation of the Pale was to take away our past. Who were we? What does this all mean? Stuck like crazed teenagers caught in an identity crisis. My people, only knowing a moderate struggle, tossed from one oppressor to the next. They took our language. They took our mothers, our young strapping boys. They took our pride. Jah, Allah, Jesus, our ancestors. Who are we? We are reborn. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. That's absolutely wonderful. That poem, specially presented here on Newsroom by Terry Adams, who's a student from the University of Pretoria. We're just about to conclude our discussion on Africa Day. Just tell us the sort of message that you want to send out to the youth and to South Africa about what Africa Day is and why we should be all supporting it.
I think this is a beautiful continent, and we need to celebrate it more. We need to take charge of what is going on in this continent, and the youth need to get more involved and speak up of what they think the continent needs and where the continent should go. Yes.
Tell us about your Facebook page before we go, where people can interact with you and how they can get involved with you on social media.
Yes, we have a Facebook page and we have a Twitter account as well. And we have a Gmail account. It's alza.tex@gmail.com.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us. That is the Deputy President of the African Union Student Alliance, Helene Liebenberg. Thank you once again. Africa Day this weekend, and Sunday it is. What are you doing to celebrate your unique Africanness? I wonder. Probably some of you are just going to put something on social media, right? Let's take a look at what you are talking about on social media, what you're saying on social media. Benjamin says, Lonman is urging people to provide solidarity with the striking mine workers, so essentially they will be starved back to work. Jimmy Mpangwa says, hungry, but we won't give in, reads one of the placards from the protesting mine workers at Lonman. Yes, their resolve is very strong. This may be a dumb question, but why isn't there any rule of law? Says Razia. And then Blue Genie says, opinion, I'd have a higher opinion of trade unions if they looked after their members' needs during these extended strikes. Those are your comments on our Twitter page at SABC Newsroom. That's where you can can, well, interact with us on Twitter. But let's now take a look at our Facebook page, because that's where we give you all the news. There's good news for homeowners, but bad news for pensioners, as the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee decided to keep rates steady, citing a depressed local economic outlook. This while economists also warn consumers against sinking deeper into debt, saying they should instead use the unchanged repo rate to reduce their debt. Then in international news, terrorist group Boko Haram has been listed on the UN Security Council's Al-Qaeda sanctions list. More on these stories on our Facebook page all of the time. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we take a look at what will be a look ahead at what will be a cracking sporting weekend. Don't go away. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Village is a large family homestead with 16 huts, each of them with its own specific purpose.
My responsibility, which is taking care of the family, as far as cleanliness is concerned, I have to make sure that I keep the home as clean as possible every morning when I wake up.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Coming up this week.
It all started with a backpack, 100 Rand, a cell phone, a camera, and a dream. Sonia Grace embarked on a journey to discover what connects us all as South African, and in her adventure, she learned firsthand the true meaning of Ubuntu.
Sasol says it's still ready and waiting for government to give the green light to fracking. Sasol avoided Eskom's woes because it makes more than 70% of its own energy. The ECB left interest rates unchanged at a record low of 0.25%. The ECB also failed to suspend weekly operations to soak up money it spent on sovereign bonds at the height of the Eurozone debt crisis, known as sterilisation.
That's business news, weekdays at 8 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just take a quick look at our top stories. Thousands of people are expected at the inauguration tomorrow, with approximately 4,500 being accommodated within the Nelson Mandela Amphitheatre at the Union Buildings. Guests are expected to arrive from 5 a.m. onwards. The swearing-in ceremony will take place at 11 a.m. More than 40 heads of state will attend. The police have seized a huge cache of guns, ammunition and explosives at a house in Norwood, Johannesburg. 3 people were arrested, but the main suspect was not home at the time of the raids. Explosives used at ATM bombings were also found. National Police Commissioner Ria Piaga has congratulated the team of officers involved in the operation. Elections for the European Parliament have got underway, with the Netherlands and Britain voting on the first day of those elections. An exit poll in the Netherlands has shown that the party of prominent Eurosceptic Geert Wilders has lost support compared to 5 years ago. The shock slide for his party bucked the expected trend of anti-EU parties winning support across the continent. Now, as we do on a Friday every weekend, we look ahead to what will be a cracking sporting weekend. I can tell you it's the first time a Champions League final will be contested by 2 derby clubs in the same city, as the Galacticos of Real Madrid face off against the new kings of Spain, their city rivals Atletico Madrid. It should be a real test of the mettle, as both Spanish clubs will be looking for a very valuable title there. Madrid, Real, of course, are hoping for La Decima, as they call it, the 10th European Cup, as it used to be known, or now Champions League, and then it'll be a very first one for Atletico Madrid, and they could join the giants in Europe if they win. Nikelo Madala is with us this week. Thank you, Nix, for coming.
Pleasure, even.
Let's start off with this game. It's really the marquee match of the weekend and probably the biggest football match in the world, Atletico against Real. What are your expectations tomorrow? Should it be the walk that people say it will be for Real?
Well, look, Atletico, like you just said, are the kings of Spain. Diego Simeone has done wonders with that team on a very limited budget compared to his city rivals. So sentiment kind of sways, I think, Atletico's way. But I think common sense says Real will take it. I'm not sure, though.
Nobody's sure. And neither are the bookies. They've got it even money both sides. But I want to talk about that man, Cristiano Ronaldo. He'll be fit for tomorrow after injury. And then Gareth Bale, who's also been battling with a little bit of a niggle. He's also going to be back. Those two players make a big difference to Real Madrid, don't they?
They make a big difference to their budget as well. But, yeah, like you're saying, I mean, they're big players. They've got the pedigree. Atletico is struggling with Diego Costa's fitness. Yeah. They're waiting to see if he's going to pitch up for the match. If he does, it's going to be an interesting match. He scored 8 in the this season's Champions League, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, it'll be a perfect exit for him on his way to Chelsea, one would think. Football, South Africa, international football. Are you surprised at what's been going on with Gordon Iggesson, seeing that, you know, from Shakes Mashaba's days, this is the kind of problems that we've had with players, club versus country, you know, playing outside of FIFA weekends. What's the thinking, you think?
My thing, you just don't know who to believe anymore. The newspapers tell you that Gordon's leaving after Chan, and then they put together a team to investigate. Gordon's cleared. Yeah. Sources high up in SAFA say that he won't go to Australia. He's in Australia now. The newspapers say there's a player revolt. SAFA comes to studio last night and say that let's not assume things. There's injuries. The season just ended.
Yeah. It's all a very tall story. Let's move happily along then, Nix, because I want to talk quickly about the playoff match, Polokwane City against Milano United. That's a big name, big match, and one of the most expensive matches in South Africa, isn't it? One of the most valuable matches in South Africa that people don't realize.
I suspect Polokwane is going down. They drew with Milano in the first leg. Litota Tuba beat them. I'm not sure what the result was between the two on Wednesday. But it's very important that Polokwane pull through, otherwise they're going to the jungle, as they say.
Yeah, Litota Tuba, they won 2-1, I think, against this team, and it looks like they'll be back in the PSL. But let's move on to your favorite sport and your favorite subject, rugby. Unfortunately, we can't talk about any of your teams. Let's talk about the Sharks. Big game going on right now, I think. Yeah, they've just kicked off. The Sharks against the Blues. That'll be a crack of a game, I would think. I think the Blues need to restore a little bit of pride, and the Sharks are playing for top spot.
The Sharks, I mean, Jay White has done this over and over again. He took the Springboks from a nothing team. He went and won the World Cup. He took the Brumbies with no players. He turned them into a competitor in last season's Super Rugby.
World beaters, really.
And he's doing the same with the Sharks. And the nice thing that Jake, I think, is doing that the rest of the franchises aren't doing locally is that big word. He's transforming the team.
He is transforming the team. So you're seeing a lot of African players in the back line, and they're doing the business, which is very impressive. So do you think this opens the door then for Jake White to take over after the 2015 World Cup? You think he's angling for the Springbok coach's position once again?
He's never made a secret of it. He wants the job. And I think based on what he's done in the past and what he's doing currently, it would be hard to say no to him should he apply for it after Heineke bows out. Soon, hopefully.
Nikelo Madala talks about hashtag bring back Jake. Don't forget that one. That's on this very show. Jake White should come back and coach South Africa, the Springboks, after the 2015 World Cup. Of course, the small matter of Heineke Meyer, that will have a lot to say about that. Finally, this weekend, I wanted to talk rugby, but I think we're running out of time. The French Open starts this weekend. Rafa again, I think, is it? Or do we expect something untoward to happen in the 2 weeks?
I mean, the favourite is always going to be Rafa, if he's fit. But Nolly takes some form and some momentum into the tournament. He beat Rafa in the Rome final.
Yeah.
So it should be interesting. I mean, I'm a Roger Federer fan. I've written him off.
Yeah, no, shame. Like you have all your teams, Nick. Western Province, the Cheetahs, Wen United. We can go down the list. They all tanked over the last couple of months. Kaizer Chiefs have tanked. Every single team that you were involved in supporting, Nikelo, are gone.
7 years of famine is followed by 7 years of great success.
Thank you very much for joining us today. That is our sports producer, senior one, that is Nikelo Madala, giving us his view on what will be a cracking sporting weekend ahead. Thanks again, Nick. Now, Newsroom, of course, broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, in South Africa. Thank you for watching. We also stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. weekdays with our entire show available on YouTube all of the time. So you can watch it if you're traveling anywhere in the world, or you can snip away from in the office and watch it while you're at work. This is SABC News. You have been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
The Swaziland Tourism Authority invited Kaleidoscope on a media tour of what has become known as the Little Switzerland of Africa, the Kingdom of Swaziland. The Mantanga Waterfall is one of Swaziland's best known and most accessible waterfalls, as it can be seen within 50 meters.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
We're coming to you from Elevate, which is based on the rooftop of Reef Hotel out here in Marshalltown in Johannesburg. Welcome to it. This is the Art Bulletin, and my name is Dumisi Dumedi. As the year draws to a close, the time has come to celebrate the works of final year students of the University of Johannesburg's Faculty of Arts, Design and Architecture. Over 500 people have walked through the doors of Fada Gallery to see the exhibition, which ends on Thursday, the 5th of December.
The stuff that they do in the studios during the course of the year is, of course, about learning the skills. It's about refining the skills that they have learnt. It's about practicing to, as we say, to lift the things off the page. You know, so it's one thing to be designing something on a piece of paper or on a computer screen, but then having to actually turn it into a three-dimensional object, like these fashion garments that you see behind me, or like the architectural models. That's all a sort of a process that they learn in the course of the year.
The Soweto T-Shirt Festival provides a marketing platform for T-shirt brands in and around the township. The second annual event by Sowetans for Sowetans will be held today at the Pinville Zone 6 Sports Center.
It's an exhibition. What happens is that Ntoba Events has created a platform for these guys who are into this business of T-shirts. We say they are entrepreneurs, because some of them, what happens is that they are the providers in their families. So by selling a T-shirt, they are making sure that there is bread on top of a table, there's a last dish at home. So as I've created this kind of an event, we call upon people to come and support. And even again, let's support our local labels, our local brands. Because if you check, here we are, Levi's, it has started somewhere. And with this kind of a T-shirt or of a cap, it needs a kind of a platform as that Ntoba Event is creating.
The annual festive season Durban Theatre calendar kicked off yesterday with Jack and the Beanstalk. The production, which is on until the 5th of January in 2014, is packed with an abundance of laughter, magnificent sets, great costumes and some magical beans.
This story appeals to everyone. It has a little bit for everyone in it, but I think it particularly will appeal to little boys because it's not just an ordinary fairy tale that usually appeals to just little girls. This is a magical adventure that little boys will really enjoy. There's also a very feisty princess, so there's something for the little girls as well, and a bit of a love story, but the main story is the magical journey of Jack as he climbs that beanstalk.
The Hope Music Festival, featuring the cream of the Cape's musical talent, is guaranteed to get your feet tapping. The annual benefit concert is set to take place at the Paul Kluber Amphitheatre and is in celebration of World AIDS Day, which is tomorrow, the 1st of December.
The event features a killer homegrown lineup comprised of popular acts like Jeremy Loops, Matthew Mole, and the Rudimantals, as well as newcomers like Elibe and many more. The 2013 Hope Musical Festival is the perfect way to support a deserving charity while soaking up local tunes. All proceeds from the ticket sales will be donated to the Thembeli Cha Foundation. Through these numerous projects and programs, the foundation provides education, training, and healthcare with a particular focus on the destitute, the sick, and the vulnerable.
The third annual International Youth Poetry and Live Music Festival ends today at the Market Theatre Laboratory in Johannesburg and the District 6 Homecoming Centre in Cape Town. Apart from performances by local and international musicians and poets, the festival also featured workshops for young people on Wednesday and Thursday.
You find that by and large a person cannot make a living off simply doing or performing, writing poetry. So it's about creating a platform such that it's able to be a cash generator for the artist and facilitate the lifestyle so that they can continue to make art. You've got artists coming in from the UK, you've got Harry Baker, you've got a poet named Pip Erasmus, and then you've got obviously your local artists, you've got Afurakan Kwazruit and myself will be hosting the 3 different shows that are going to be hosted here, and then we'll have like an open mic finale, which is basically a slam poetry open mic that's coming to its culmination. You've got Mutle Motibe, you've got your Nova Masangos, Vangingan shows, and then you've got some great musical acts like Mongeziwe and Keti. So it's actually pretty exciting.
Angela Malan and Lauren Dixon Seeger are the ballet mistresses of the popular, classic and traditional production of The Nutcracker. That production by the artistic crew of Joburg Ballet ends today at the South African State Theatre in Tshwane.
Nutcracker is done all over the world, and I think what better company to do it than Joburg Ballet. We represent the company very well, we represent the country very well. We've got amazing dancers who have danced overseas. We've got Cuban dancers, we've got dancers from Brazil, so we've got a good international reflection. And they do the ballet justice, and I think if you want to have good, wholesome entertainment, you've got to come and watch the Nutcracker.
Well, Nutcracker is such a magical ballet for this time of the year. So for me, it's a dream to be the lead in this ballet. A lot of stress and responsibility comes with it as well because you have to carry the whole production. But it is a dream come true, so it's magical.
A visual artist from the Netherlands, Sander van Bassel, has made it to South Africa with his project titled The Declaration of Universal Human Rights Characters. This project was inspired by the murder of his fellow visual artist from Nairobi called Stephen Nyashnaiga. The project aims to spread the message of universal human rights using 6,773 tattoo characters.
A human rights tattoo is a project creating